Welcome in to the NFL Every Game on the Board podcast here, simulcast on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. We got Teddy Covers, first handicapper up. Teddy, welcome in. How you feeling?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself today, Drew?
I'm doing good. Interested in this weekend's NFL card. Actually, starting off on the weekday slate here. We got NFC East, Teddy. Somebody's got to win the division. It could be one of these two. We got New York Giants at the Philadelphia Eagles, 45 being the total. The Eagles -4 in the hook at home, Teddy.
Yeah, so, we talked about the long shots in the NFC East being worth the potential bet to win the division a few weeks back when Dallas was struggling and Philly was struggling. We talked about the Washington football team, the Giants, as being live as anybody in that division. And now that Dallas has fallen apart and Philadelphia has fallen apart, it really is anybody gets hot for 3 games and they can win the NFC East right now. This has been the Giants' role with Danny Dimes. It was the Giants' role before Danny Dimes, and it's been there for the last couple of years. 13-3, the G-men. The last 16 tries as road dogs. And you look at the statistical profile here. This is something that I like doing on the Every Game on the Board podcast because I don't have the stats all in front of me for the opening line report on Monday. But when you go through the stats here, the Giants have the better run defense. The Giants have the better pass defense. And they're catching points. So I'm not surprised at all that we've seen the Giants getting some betting market respect. I wouldn't be shocked if they get more betting market respect over the course of the week. But now that we've seen the move down to 4.5, I haven't seen any indications it's going to go lower. Philadelphia, the injuries just keep piling up for the Eagles. It doesn't get any better for Philadelphia. Look at the latest injury report. It's every bit as ugly as maybe even uglier. I shouldn't say that because there are a couple guys that are supposed to come back this week for Philadelphia. Lane Johnson may be back this week. They could have Deshaun Jackson back as well, Avonte Maddox. But with those guys coming back, they lost Malik Jackson, Miles Sanders, Zach Ertz, Jack Driscoll, Alshon Jeffrey, and Kevon Wallace in the last week. So it's not like the guys coming back or even overcoming the guys that are getting hurt for Philadelphia. They're a tough team for me to lay points with right now. It's Giants or pass for this better. Under something that's certainly worth considering here, being that the Giants aren't scoring points against anyone. And Philly's offense, a work in progress. They had a nice second half last week against Baltimore, but that's been the exception rather than the rule.
And Teddy, this is the Thursday night. I believe it's the final presidential debate on Thursday night. Do you think that will affect the total handle on this game?
No.
It's two different things.
Yeah, I think it'll affect the total views on the presidential debate.
Really? You think
Sure.
it will work? Okay.
Absolutely. Again, if you talk about a presidential debate on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, it's a different story than when it's going against football. Tuesday or Wednesday, it's going to get the eyeballs. Thursday, the eyeballs it's going to get split. Pretty confident of that.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff there for the weeknight game in the NFL. Guys, we got the top of the card on Sunday coming up next. 451, 452, 10 a.m. Pacific kick here. We got Cleveland Browns at the Cincinnati Bengals. 50.5 being the total, and we're seeing mostly 3.5s out there. That's the Cleveland Browns laying on the road. Teddy, I like the Bengals here catching 3 in the hook at home. I think they actually got the better quarterback. You want to talk me off of that?
I don't know if I'm going to talk you off of it, but I'm certainly not going to talk you onto it.
Okay.
Let's start with this. These two teams met. We have a rematch already in the NFL this early in the season. The final score says 35-30. And Cincy had 3. That's actually the first score came at the end of the third quarter. But they had a pair of scores in the last 6 minutes to get it under the number. And you say, all right, the Bengals scored 30 points on this team. They moved the ball up and down the field. From a yards per play standpoint, the game was a complete blowout. All right, Browns 7.5 yards per play, Bengals 4.0. What Cincy was able to do was convert on every fourth down. I think they were 5 of 5 on fourth downs in that ballgame, and a bunch of third downs as well. So they made the key plays when they had to. It's a Bengals team that is now 0-10-1. Their last 11 games decided by a single score. All right, they're just not winning the game. Decided by 7 points or less I think they did have a couple of wins by 8 points, which makes it look better when you say, by a single score if you use 8 points as opposed to 7. But since he has consistently been losing these type of games, the games with the tight point spreads, it's been a problem for them. This is a team that doesn't know how to win. And you can understand it's a rookie quarterback. It's a defense that has had some issues, all of that. Now, can Cleveland bounce back off of last week's debacle? And is Baker Mayfield healthy? I mean, everything now is about let's get rid of Baker. Baker's the problem. It's Baker's issue. Cleveland's supposed to be a Super Bowl contender, all right? That's supposed to be their upside. The offensive line is loaded. The defense is loaded. The skill position talent is loaded. We like the coaching staff this year. They're coming off a no-show. Maybe I do like Cleveland in this one. I know I don't want Cincy. Cincy's not the better of the two teams, and their track record in games like this have been problematic. And in the first meeting, it's something, I'm not going to say it's a fraudulent final score or anything like that, but it's somewhat of a fraudulent final score. The Browns were the much better team on that day, and I would not be surprised at all if they're the much better team again this week if Baker Mayfield's ribs are healthy enough to get him throwing the football. And obviously, we're recording on Wednesday. We have not yet got a proper practice report from Mayfield this week. We'll get it between now and Friday. Yeah,
and of course, we are filming here Wednesday, doing the simulcast on the WagerTalk YouTube channel, wherever you're downloading your podcasts at. Remember, Sports Memo Podcast. Shout out to Jackson and Joe B joining us live here. I know most of you guys watch this show on replay via podcast and on YouTube. So welcome in as well. And please feel free to leave a comment below and smash the like button. It does help us out. We got NFC East battle up next, Teddy. Dallas Cowboys, Washington football team. Pick'em price here, 46 being the total. Dallas, 0-6 ATS. But I kind of like him here, Teddy.
Yeah, so how often do you feel like punching yourself in the face?
Not very often.
Yeah, as a bettor, I feel that way once in a while. I do. And, I put out a play on Dallas relatively early for Monday Night Football. And just throughout the day on Monday, I'm feeling like a little bit queasy about less and less confident. I see the money pouring in on Dallas. I start thinking about the game again. I'm like, geez, I got the worst quarterback and the worst coach and the worst defense, and it's a pick'em game, and the money's pouring in. And obviously the Cowboys were never in the game. Mentally, they were never in the game. And that's a huge concern. When you have a Monday Night Football game, you have a chance to take control of your division. Your backup QB is getting his first shot. Those are, in theory, supposed to be your step up. And for Dallas, it was the exact opposite. Now they're pitching at McCarthy. And officially, let me just make this very clear. I will not lose any more money on Andy Dalton ever again. Dalton's like Flacco. You see him, you bet against him. You see him, you bet against him. And somehow or other, I got turned around and got talked into betting on Andy Dalton. That won't happen again. Barring Andy Dalton getting a complete turnaround at the age 30, whatever, something he is. When you have that stuff in your head and you break it for whatever reason and then it loses, it just makes you 100 times more frustrated. You're ready to punch yourself in the face. I knew that Andy Dalton was no good, and I still played Dallas, and I'm still mad about it. So in terms of my thought process of this game, it is absolutely it's the anti-Dallas stuff is still in my head. All right, the anti-Dalton stuff. And again, Dalton Dalton was awful early. The score didn't show it, but yeah, I don't know if you watched the play. There was Dallas got pushed back in their own territory. They're thrown out of their end zone, and Dalton literally, it might have been the worst pass of the year anyone's thrown. He threw it right to the opposite receiver, the opposite cornerback, and he dropped it. Arizona dropped it. And I'm like, phew, dodged a bullet there. At that moment, I knew, whatever, there was trouble brewing.
Yeah.
And it brewed. So here's Dallas, all right? You have Andy Dalton, who the team doesn't believe in, the coaching staff doesn't believe in, doesn't believe in himself, et cetera, et cetera. You have a Cowboys offensive line that is now, I guess we can call it shambles right now. With the two Hall of Famers on IR and Zach Martin getting hurt last week, a Pro Bowler. It's an offensive line that's not what it's supposed to be. You have Zeke Elliott, who has more lost fumbles this year than the other top 10 running backs combined. And Zeke Elliott, whose head was not in the game on Monday Night Football. I can understand why this game's picked. If you're taking the Washington football team, there's a leap of faith with that. They're a bad football team. They're bad on both sides of the ball. They can't score. The pass rush has been okay. But you put it up against any offense that can move the ball. I mean, they gave up 30 plus in 4 games prior to facing the Giants last week. Washington, not a team I'm real comfortable putting my money on in a pick'em game, but I know this much. It won't be Dallas and it won't be Dalton. There are these veteran quarterbacks that are collecting checks that you just cannot put your money on. And I made a mistake to do it. I won't make that mistake again.
Teddy, we got a bunch of guys coming in the chat box. Ben, Mr. Know-It-All, Omar saying Bears +6, Shannon in from Memphis. Questions in terms of Dallas needing to trade for Fitzpatrick. Could you see that happening at all?
No, I don't see that happening because they could have gotten Fitzpatrick in the offseason. They wanted him. They wanted Andy Dalton. That's who they got. That's who they paid their money for. I would be very surprised to see an in-season trade for Ryan Fitzpatrick, especially for a Cowboys team that's sitting at 2-4 right now. I understand they can win the division, and you win the division, you do, anything can happen in the postseason. But I don't see management for Dallas necessarily making any kind of win now move. And to get Fitzpatrick, you have salary cap ramifications. You're going to have to trade draft choices to get him, and I'm not convinced the Cowboys are ready to do that.
Okay, fair enough there. We got Detroit at Atlanta up next. This is 457, 458. Still 10 a.m. Pacific kicks here, guys. -2, -2.5. That's the Falcons laying in Mercedes-Benz. 55.5 the total here, Teddy.
Yeah, this is I'm honestly rooting for this game to be over so I can bet on the team that loses. Because I saw a lot of bet on from both these teams last week. And again, Atlanta, there's no betting bandwagon for the Falcons. It's a defense that is not trusted. And if you watch the Falcons play last week defensively under Raheem Morris, it was a little bit different. They were really emphasizing the defensive speed and flying across the field, thinking less and reacting more. And it worked. It worked against Minnesota. There's a chance it could work here against Detroit. Wouldn't shock anyone. The Lions played a good game against the Jaguars, so you do want to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. Not that Minnesota is a great team and Atlanta went up to Minnesota and beat up a great team. No, I'm not saying that. But the Vikings hadn't been bottom feeders until they ran into a hot team last week, and then they played like bottom feeders. The Jags been bottom feeders the whole way, and they are what they are. It's a Lions offense. They're capable of putting up points in bunches. So is Atlanta when Ryan's on and the pass rush is in there. And we're not talking about two teams with great pass rush. We're not talking about two teams that put a ton of pressure on the opposing QB. We're not talking about two teams that necessarily have anything resembling elite defenses. And, of course, the total here is high, 55.5, 56. But this game feels like a shootout. And it's also it's a great teaser type of game. Where you're whenever you have the favorite at 2.5, you can tease that dog up to 8.5. I think Detroit makes sense in teasers, 6-point teasers, depending on who you want to partner them with. But that certainly falls into basic strategy. Of course, when you're talking about teasers, the points are worth more when the total is less. But I don't see either team laying down if they get punched in the mouth in this game. This is essentially it's a really big game for both teams. We've seen enough character from Atlanta to know that even after their start, they haven't quit. They didn't quit last year or the year before. We've seen a spark from Detroit where they were able to bounce back. From that game against the Saints, in which they blew another lead. And it's worth noting in terms of in-game, both of these teams have a strong propensity for blowing leads. Anyone leads by doubles early, take the team that's trailing plus the points, and you may well be live.
I like that. Look, Teddy, we got Teddy covers 80% with his 5% plays in the NFL this season. And guys, in the NFL, he's beaten the NFL betting markets since 2015, long term here, since week 1, 2015, 199 and 155. That's 56%. All plays across the NFL. Check him out, WagerTalk or sportsmemo.com. Teddy covers. We got Carolina at New Orleans up next, 51 being the total, with the Saints laying 7 in the hook in the Big Easy.
This really is an interesting matchup because it's if there's a team that's supposed to know Teddy Bridgewater's tendencies, it's going to be New Orleans, where he's played in recent season. It was the backup for Breeze. Obviously, they went 5-0 straight up, 5-0 against the spread. with Bridgewater as the Saints quarterback last year. So in theory, this is a defense that is supposed to be able to, I don't know, get some stops in a game like this one against the Panthers team. And Carolina was very sloppy last week. It was not a crisp performance. And a lot of it had to do with what happened up front. Well, early in the season, they were struggling in the red zone a fair bit. And last week they were awful. And the red zone execution wasn't there. The offensive line got pushed around a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it just was. The Bears were able to control in the trenches, and when a team controls in the trenches, it's hard to overcome that. New Orleans hasn't, certainly on the defensive side, they haven't been controlling the trenches at all. It's worth noting Joe Brady, the Panthers offense coordinator, coached under Sean Payton, so there's some familiarity there. It's not just that the New Orleans may be capable of designing a game plan to contain Bridgewater, but you have the other coaches for Carolina who may be able to design a game plan to help against Sean Payton's tendencies. And the Saints, laying points with the Saints at home in divisional matchups has not been a particularly good proposition. And it's a Saints team that defensively, I've seen nothing but concerns and weaknesses. And of course, when they went into the bye, I'm not going to say fat and happy, but they rallied back from a double-digit deficit, won on the road, and went on the bye. That's not necessarily a bye sign, whereas the Panthers are coming off a pretty crappy effort. I'm not surprised that we've seen some Carolina money. I wouldn't be surprised to see more Carolina money. If I'm going to play this game, I'm much more likely to be on the dog than I am in the favorite.
Teddy, we got 463, 464 up next. Buffalo at the New York Jets. We're seeing the Jets catching 13 now, 45 or 45 and a half being the total. We already talked the Dallas Cowboys here, Teddy, the 0-6 ATS Dallas Cowboys. Now we got the 0-6 ATS New York Jets. What do you think here?
Yeah, the Jets are pretty historically bad. All right, they've lost their first 6 games by 18 points per. They've lost the first 6 games against the spread by more than 11 points per game. And that's significant, and it really is. From a statistical profile, you look at the Jets, they're gaining 4.3 yards per play. That is by far the worst in the NFL. They're allowing 5.9, which is, there's teams worse than that. But again, nobody has had to do anything against the Jets in the second half of most of these games. Including the first meeting between these two teams. You remember on week 1, Buffalo dominated early, went into halftime with a big lead, and the Jets came out in the second half and moved the football and scored a little bit, and all of a sudden it was a 10-point game. It kept things interesting. The Bills still got the money, but look at the point spread now. The Bills win by 10, and they won that game comfortably. The Jets had a couple of drives in the second half, et cetera, et cetera. The Bills were the dominant team. And now we've seen it's a Bills team that is absolutely out of sync. We saw them play on a Tuesday night and look awful and look out of sync. We saw them play on a Monday night and look awful and look out of sync. And now they're on another short week here against the Jets. Josh Allen certainly did not. I'll give the Chiefs defense credit. They have the 2 best performances for a half in the NFL this year against an opposing QB. They did it once against Lamar Jackson, and they did it against Josh Allen last week. Which is when you're holding a team less than 50 passing yards for a half, you're doing something right. So we'll give the Chiefs defense credit, though that's irrelevant for this. But it also speaks to everyone was like, Josh Allen stinks. Oh, my God, he's missing open receivers. The Bills suck. I'm not buying that. That said, Buffalo has shown defensive vulnerability, and they've shown offensive vulnerability, and they're laying 2 touchdowns on the road, which speaks to what the Jets are in 2020. I cannot recommend a play on the worst team in the league. I cannot recommend a play in a team that's getting out-yarded by 1.6 yards per play. I cannot recommend a play in a team that has significant internal chemistry issues like the Jets clearly do. It's worse if there's a difference between Flacco and Sam Darnold. All right, the Jets may have a fighting chance if their QB comes back this week. If it's Flacco, again, they're quarterbacks you just don't want your money on. And the aging guys who were good 10 years ago that are awful now but still have a name, like Flacco, It's really hard to make money betting on bad teams across sports. In the NFL, I know there's systems and say, there was great system for the Jets last week. 67% teams in their role covered against the Dolphins. And obviously we saw what happened there. Another non-competitive effort. Jets are recognize that the Jets are a very hard team for the markets to attract money to, hence this number being where it is. But I can't tell anyone, look them in the eye and say, yeah, I love the Jets this week. What are your, that was a great tweet that I saw. It was like, name the worst forward advice you could give to anyone on Twitter. And some guy wrote Jets plus the points.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, Teddy, you brought up the point there in the beginning. The New York Jets are historically bad. Interested in your opinion on, I remember the Dolphins had a 1-15 year. Maybe the Detroit Lions were in that kind of ballpark. Do you, just off the top of your head, can you compare them to teams in the past in the NFL? Is this the worst team in the last 20 years?
No. The Lions team and the winless Browns team. There was a Browns team that won a game with Keith Kaiser at QB that's worth talking about as being the worst amongst the worst. And again, the Jets were only 6 games in. Let's see what they look like a month or two from now. But they, again, based on my numbers, they're in the range of some of these truly historic bottom feeders. But it's going to take another 2 months of bad play for them to get there.
Okay, and I've seen some, will the Jets win a game and it's like minus 400 one way? If the season over-under was 1.5, would you bet over or under?
Let me look at the Jets' upcoming schedule real quick. Can I do that?
Okay. No, I don't have it in front of me.
No, I got it right here. If you give me just a minute, I will call it up. How do you spell New York? That's a joke. All right, let's go through it. We have Buffalo this week, at Kansas City, Patriots the week after, Miami the week after, Vegas. That's a 3-game homestand, although there's a bye in between. They don't leave home between November 1st at KC and then December 13th at Seattle. But anyhow, they have Vegas, at Seattle, at the Rams, Cleveland at home, New England. Based on that schedule, 1.5 the right number.
Yeah.
I ain't betting over.
Okay. He's Teddy Covers on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. Follow me on Twitter at Drew Martin Bets. Guys, feel free to throw out any questions in the chat box. And if you're watching on replay, the comments below on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. We got last game for this segment. Then we're bringing in Minty Bets to be the closer and finish off the back half of the card. We got Green Bay at Houston up next, 465-466, 10 a.m. Pacific kick. On Sunday, the Packers laying 3 in the hook on the road, 57 the total in Houston.
So when you think about these two teams this year, you say, oh my God, Green Bay's been good, Houston's been bad. There's a world of difference between these two squads. You start looking at some numbers and you say, wow, maybe there isn't that much difference between these two squads. Houston, 6.3 yards per play. Green Bay, 6.2. Texas had the more explosive offense, period. That's the, on defense, Houston 6.1. That's not good. Green Bay's 5.9. That's not that good either. Not a huge world. You're thinking defensively, wow, the Packers are way better. No, they haven't been. Running the football is where the biggest difference have been, particularly against the run. The Texans have been awful against the run. They're giving up 5.4 yards per carry, and that's been their problem. That's been their issue. But Green Bay's a pass-first team. That said, the Texans' pass defense allowed 101 opposing QBs, 101.5 QB ratio. That is ugly. Green Bay, 106.2, which isn't that great. So we have this image of the Packers, 13-3 last year, 4-0 to start the season this year. My image of Green Bay is not as high as the markets. And obviously, a big ticket last week on Tampa, plus the points at home against Green Bay. I'm still enjoying the point spread, but that's where the Packers are lined. That's what the markets are looking at Green Bay. Is they say, oh, wow, look at this team. The statistical profile shows something different, and they got punched in the mouth last week, and we've seen it in every Packers loss last 2 years. Again, they lost 4 games last year. 3 of the 4 were blowouts. The 4th game by a touchdown. They've had 1 loss this year's blowout. When Green Bay gets punched in the mouth, they don't respond well. The question we have, of course, is what do we do with the Texans now? And from a strength of schedule standpoint, again, Green Bay has played the only decent opponent they've played all year. was who we saw last week in Tampa, and they got annihilated in that game. Houston's played KC, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, Jacksonville, Tennessee. They played 4 elite teams: Pittsburgh, Tennessee, Baltimore, KC, and
probably the toughest schedule in the NFL.
Yeah, but they were. I mean, they were in the game last week, and Cornell got in trouble for going for 2, which was the right move. Anyone that says it's not, I disagree with. It was the right move. If you have a chance to clinch a game, you try to clinch a game. I have no issue with him going for 2. Obviously, it backfired. None of the quotes make me think the team's quit on him. None of that kind of stuff. I would not be surprised at all to see the Texans bounce back and step up here against a Packers team that I continue to think is a little bit overvalued in the betting market. And, of course, the injury news for Green Bay was not great. I pulled up the wrong one. Sorry. See, this is what I got everything all set up before we went on the podcast, but and then I'm pulling up the wrong stuff. The injury report's like in order, so I could go through them, and then I pulled up the wrong one anyway. But I'm worried about Green Bay's offensive line with Bakhtiari. Haven't heard of an update on him. That's an impact injury. So is Kevin King in the secondary, and that's 2 guys. If they don't play, the Packers will miss them both.
Teddy, great stuff as always. I know everybody in the chat box loving it as well. Shout out to Big Sky, Charles in Charge, Keith B, all you guys joining us here. Please smash the like button if you're liking the content. We got Teddy coming on for NFL Opening Line Report next week and the Every Game on the Board podcast as well. We'll have Minty on for the back half of the card here, and Rob Vino actually coming up at 2:00 Pacific to break down college football every game on the board for the first section. But Teddy, what do you got going on this weekend? Anything you want to throw out there?
Yeah, just a quick question. I saw a question in the chat from Big Psych. Hey, Teddy, are the Steelers a top 3 team in the league, Super Bowl in their future? I've got Pittsburgh as a top 5 team right now. However, cluster injuries on the offensive line, that's not good news for Big Ben moving forward. Right now, I've got nothing up for the weekend. On Wednesday, I have absolutely nothing up yet. I'm going to wait till Thursday or Friday. There's too much COVID stuff floating around right now for me to be comfortable with. And there weren't the games that were jumping off the page where the line's moving. I'm like, I got to get this up. So I'll post my first football tomorrow. We'll close out the card on Friday, but everything will be up and available, as always, Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific time.
Check them out, WagerTalk or sportsmemo.com. Guys, is 5%, 80% in the NFL this season. If you want the longer sample size, which I like more, 199 and 155, that's 56% in the NFL since week 1 of 2015. So you guys can do the math. Long time there, track record in the NFL. Teddy, anything you want to throw out?
Thanks. Hey, guys, thanks for hanging out. We appreciate it. We really do. If you like the podcast, there's only one thing. I mean, Drew says smash the like button. Like button to me is not tell your friend. If you like the podcast, tell your friend. If everyone tells one friend, we appreciate it so much. Thank you. And have a great day. Good luck this weekend. Yeah,
tell your friends. Every American football game, every week. It's right here, WagerTalk YouTube channel and the Sports Memo podcast. So check it out, college football and NFL. For Teddy Covers, I'm Drew Martin. Guys, best of luck with your bets. We'll be right back with Robbie Vino.